श्री बी रामकृष्ण रेड्डी जी को आमंत्रित कर रहा हूं उनके आलेख पाठ के लिए। उनके आलेख पाठ का विषय है द्रविडियन ट्राइबल लॉ।
Good afternoon to everybody. At the outset, I would like to thank Professor Anvita B for inviting me and the Sahitya Academy for bearing with me all the invitations. Before I start, for those of our friends who are not from linguistics, I may just take 1 or 2 minutes. Dravidian, generally people take it for granted that there are only 4 languages, namely Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada and Telugu. I would be talking about the rest of the 20 languages which belong to the so-called minor languages or unwritten languages or neglected and undermined. Okay. My field work has been mainly in the bordering areas of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, especially in Kalahandi district of Odisha, which is the it is affected by all sorts of problems. Okay, before I start, you see, if you look at the tribal lore of the unwritten languages, the first people to record their literature, oral literature, were the non-Indian scholars. I repeat, our Indian scholars, with their prejudice, never paid any attention to these people, either in Orissa or in Andhra Pradesh or in Tamil Nadu. It was those people who started work on the folklore as well as on their languages. Okay, the tribal community has got a universal concept. Many of our so-called educated and so-called civilized people think tribals are uncivilized. It is because these people are prejudiced against them. Many times, with my own experience, I feel that they are better civilized than those who criticize them. Let me start with a prayer song, or it is not prayer in the normal sense that we understand. I will just repeat first in the language. Beto ayake, taha ayake, arne ayake, aya jiyake, abba jiyake, duko baba ke, kasto baba ke, harda mana ke, girda mana ke. I will just translate it for you. May there be riches and mother live long. May father live long and no sorrow befall on anybody. May no hardship occur. May happiness be everywhere. Let everybody have a very good hunting and be prosperous. It reminds us of the Sanskrit slokam, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the Tamil one, Yadum Ure Yavarum Kailir, which means every place is mine, everybody is my relative. I am translating only the Tamil. I am not competent to translate Sanskrit. Okay, coming to the topic given by the organizer, Professor Anvita ji, it is about the world of tales and myths. First, I will just refer to the tales of the tribal community of the Dravidian speakers. Interestingly, there are more tribal Dravidian languages in Odisha than the entire South India. Many people don't recognize this because the migration of the tribal community, when Dravidian speaking communities, from the Indus Valley to the southern part of India, they were spread out right from Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, then to the southern states. Now there are 5 states. So most of them somehow stayed back and continued to live in the Odisha. There are nearly more than 11 languages spoken in Odisha, Kuyi, Kuvi, Manda, Pengo, Indi, Ave, Kolami, Naiki, Padji, Gadaba, etc. So all these communities, these are only the Dravidian communities. There are other tribal communities in Odisha which also speak the languages which belong to Austroasiatic family, which are known as Munda languages. Okay. So in other words, there is an excellent contribution to the oral literature of the Dravidian field by these tribal communities. As many of us know, the tales as we come across, most of them are oral, some of them are written. The written tradition started for these languages as early as the later 19th century or during the 20th century. Okay, an oral tale, unlike the written tale, it is vibrant, it is vulnerable, and unlike the written tale, the oral tale has the voice quality narration, the commitment of the narrator with the entire story, and also is part of it. Okay, the oral stories are transmitted from generation to generation. When this transmission occurs, there is also certain deletions, certain additions on the basis of the new culture. As Anvitaji pointed out, the modernity comes to these stories when they are retold and reorganized in their mind. You see, these stories are not read from any text. These are from their memory. Memory can assist you, memory can deviate you, memory can help you, memory cannot help you also sometimes. So these things go on and on. As Dr. Patnaik has pointed out, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, when they come to the tribal communities, they have a different way of talking about it. And this variation is due to the social context of the stories. The social context, namely the narrator, the listener, and also the audience. And all these people contribute. Many times when we were collecting these stories, the tribal community people create stories, especially these songs, instantaneously. They are not learnt earlier. For example, M.B. Emino, who worked on Thoda very intensively, when he was collecting the folk tales, the tribal community has narrated many poems about Emino. He has recorded and printed them in his book, Thoda Texts. So, in other words, these are not imitators alone, but creators as well. They create instantaneously. That sort of capacity they have got. The original link between these things are who is telling the tale, to whom, and who are the listeners. These decide the style, the shape, the expression, the theme and the content also. Theme of the, which story do you like? So that sort of stuff. The oral tale, not told in a vacuum. You know, you don't read on your own. It is addressed to people. It requires physical presence of a narrator and several others. Here, their main aim is to propagate the oral culture or to retain the oral culture, which includes characteristics such as supernatural, that's very common, magical, and non-realistic. Many times the stories are naturally non-realistic. And there are multifarious levels of oral tale. Not only, one way, but various other ways of. Oral tales are continuously transmitted from generation to generation, and they create metaphors as they go on. Regarding metaphors, let me just narrate a very small thing. I collected the Kuvi tales and songs and submitted to one of my teachers, who was the director of the institute at that time in Mysore, Dr. E. Annamalai. Many of our colleagues know him. He reminded me, Mr. Reddy, this reminds me of the old Tamil literature, Sangam literature. In other words, Sangam literature was more rural, very close to the people's way of life, and this sort of thing is retained. Another community which is far away in middle part of Odisha, and they have retained similar concepts, namely the story deals about the area, the people, their surroundings, the forest, the rivers, etc., etc., this sort of thing. Oral tales create metaphors, as I told you. Tale has several features: the content, the form, the theme, role of the tales in the development of the culture. The cultural patterns are retained through these oral tales, and only from oral it is transmitted to the written text. And they have a lot of social relevance to the community and also to the outsiders. Now, how to document these things? You know, earlier, for example, when we were introduced some 40 years ago, we were writing down the stories and translating them with the help of a translator as well. But nowadays, there are methods. People can do it with the help of latest technology, and also digitization and archivation, etc. So there are a better way of recording what we call these texts, and these fixed texts as well as free text. Fixed means you are just narrating what is told to you. Free means you create when you are narrating. This sort of thing. Okay, what are the various themes of these tales? Generally, these include the myths, festivals, rituals, life cycle events, human supernatural interaction, human animal encounters, apologues, apologue means animal stories, religious practices, ritual heritage, worship of Mother Earth. You see, one of the very interesting thing about this, most of the tribal communities, Mother Earth is there in different forms. In fact, many of you know the goddesses around the villages throughout India, right from Durga to Mutyalamma in my village. These are all representatives of the Mother Earth, which gives us life. Okay, and many of these things, I don't have time to narrate many stories, but later on I will tell you one thing. And tribal lore, when we collected, I have come across the following that have come out. I mean, we have been able to record the narratives, the traditional ones, the modern ones, and the personal story also, personal narrations also. And songs, individual songs, group songs in a dialogue form, instant creations. Let me tell you one observation. In tribal communities, the boys will form one group, unmarried boys, and the unmarried girls would be another form. And they would be singing against each other. And these songs, some of them are inherited, and most of them they create, because this singing is done at the time of festival, and the intention is to find a life mate. These are, I mean, girls in their teen ages, because they get married very early, and the boys also. And so they will be talking about the family of the girls, their family name, their way of life in a jocular form. Similarly, the girls would be replying. When we recorded, there was so much of new creations in these sort of songs. And apart from this, there are plays, dramas, proverbs, riddles, jokes, idioms, stories, ballads, and many of these type of things that we come across in these as part of the oral literature, which is part of their life. Epics are retold, like Ramayana, Mahabharata. For example, in the tribal Mahabharatas, it is Bhima who is the main character, not Yudhishthira, not even Sri Krishna. Somehow, we don't know, because Mahabharata also says Bhima has married Hidambi, who is supposed to be a tribal girl, though they used to call them Rakshasa. That's nothing but probably other community. I don't want to name it. So, for example, when Pandavas were there, Bhima went along, Draupadi to collect bamboo rice and roots for their eating. It was during the Aranyavasa. Okay? And then Draupadi came across a flower which had excellent fragrance. But unfortunately by then it was not fresh. So she wanted Bhima, you go and get me a fresh flower which has all this fragrance. So Bhima went in search of it. On the way he came across Hanuman, Anjaneya. Anjaneya wanted to make him to feel that he is inferior to him, Anjaneya. Then Bhima accepts his supremacy, his brother, because both of them are supposed to be the children of Vayudeva, the goddess of wind. So then Anjaneya directs Bhima how to go and get this fragrant flower, this sort of thing. Then many of you might have read or heard of the Yuganta by a well-known anthropologist Iravati Karve. There she says, when the Pandavas went to the heaven, there was a time when Draupadi was left alone with Bhima. Then Draupadi narrated to him, if at all I have another Janma, I would like to marry you only, because you are the one who has killed those people who have insulted me. The Kauravas, namely the Duryodhana and the Dusyasana. So this sort of thing, when it comes from an anthropologist like Iravati Karve, maybe she has taken from folklore, maybe she has interpreted, because Yugant is an interpretation in favor of women characters of Mahabharata. Okay. And then in these stories, there is epics, and then life cycle rituals are also narrated. The naming, the puberty, the wedding, family relations between wife and husband, the death, funeral ceremonies, and these are songs. For example, in Tamil Nadu, there is a tradition in some of the communities, after the death, during the funeral, there is a community which sings in praise of the man who passed away. And this is there in the Irula community, which is one of the well-known tribal communities in Tamil Nadu, in southern Tamil Nadu, near Coimbatore area. Similarly, the traditional tradition also. At this, let me also tell you, there are many places in southern India and also in Orissa where the names were given by the tribal community. For example, Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu is known as Kovai. And actually this was the name given by the Irula community as Kovvam. It was recently adapted some time ago for this name. Similarly, there are many temples. For example, Sri Sailam Mallikarjuna is nothing but the Chenchu's Mallanna. Chenchu is another community, tribal community which lives in that area. Then what happened, as Srinivas has called, I will finish, yeah. As M.N. Srinivas has pointed out, all these things have gone through the Sanskritization and to some extent Aryanization also. Then I will take just 5 minutes, Kavitaji. 5 minutes, okay. Regarding myths, I have a lot of myths, 2 books, but there is no time. Myths are generally about the creation myths, how a community came to. Whatever communities I have worked, each community has its own creation myth. Creation, how they have come into the existence. There is interaction between supernatural and the ordinary, and there were only 2 people. Since both of them were children of the same brother and sister got married, that's how they could continue their generation and heritage. Now, due to the modern technological development, due to the killer major languages of this country, the so-called scheduled languages, our tribal languages are endangered, and their folklore is also endangered. Because, you see, for example, 30 years ago when I worked on a community, there were reliable speakers. Today when I go there, they don't want to bother. They would like to watch the television in Oriya or Tamil or Telugu. They don't identify even with their language, the younger generation. So naturally, the folklore and their cultural activities, everything is disappearing. So it is our duty, not only the linguists, but also the educationists, the sociologists, the folklorists, to collect and preserve it for posterity, because this represents our ancient Indian heritage, ancient Indian culture, the worldview, human activity. Everybody is equal in the tribal community. In Central India, my experience is, a woman, if she is a widow, she is eligible for second marriage without any problem. In fact, the man has to pay her back whatever she requires to get second or third marriage. So let us not undermine them, but there is much that we can learn culturally and civilization-wise also from these communities, and there are many things, but there is no time. So thank you for your attention. Thank you.